All right, picking up on what we learned in the first lesson, I'm going to show you a little bit kind of more practical way of using these rig poses and something I like to do specifically. So what we want to do is we want to start creating, essentially what we want to do is I'm going to create hand controls for this. So I can easily curl the hand into a fist, or I can widen the hand, or I can basically so just so I can just adjust each finger individually and control that with just sliders, and I can make it real nice and real easy. So what we want to do is it's going to require a few different rig poses, but this first one, I'm going to go rig pose curled fist, and all we got to do here is we just got to curl this into a fist. The best way about doing fingers with a rig pose and anything FK is you want to select all of these joints before you actually start really manipulating anything, because instead of going through one by one and say I wanted to curl it, I'd have to go here, I'd have to go down to the middle of the finger, then the end of the finger, and then I get my curl. So, but that's not what I want to do, because if you select all of them at once, all of your rotations are going to be applied to each individual. So you'll see by curling, with all of them selected, by just curling at the base, I can basically curl each joint, and since they are parented to each other, it's basically curling from this point curls, and then this joint curls, and so forth. So you get kind of a continuing curl effect. Okay, so we want to go ahead and select all the fingers, and I'm just going to stop the video while I select all the fingers. All right, so I have all these fingers selected on the left hand, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select. I like to just go back and hold shift and select the middle finger, just because I don't want to be curling around any of these orientations. And then I'll go ahead and I'll just curl to a point that looks decent. And then I'll usually go ahead and I'll make a few edits on top of all this. So I'll just kind of go around and pose how I want kind of a fist look to look like. And then little tip in the viewport, when you're rotating, I don't exactly know what the default is, so you can either rotate around in world space, where you'll notice the Y is up, and then I got all these values, and everything's kind of rotating around in world space. If I hit M, you'll see it changes the alignment, and I can keep changing it until it's aligned with object or component, and that way I can kind of you'll see this whole thing moves with the object. All right, and then so we got the fist curled, and then I'm just gonna copy and paste it. You really can just drop down another one. I'm gonna call this rig pose splay, which is gonna be like, let me just scroll up here, clear this out, and we just kind of want to widen the hand. How it would, like, if you had to stretch your hand out. You don't gotta call it splay, but that's what I like to call it. So you can get real crazy with this too, if you want. Like, honestly, it's not bad to go way out here, because we're gonna be blending between these. So getting more extreme values actually isn't the worst thing ever, because you're gonna be kind of compiling these on top of each other. So you don't know, sometimes there might be a way you want to stretch something. But I'm also going to show you some cool things about skeleton blend here in a second. So just don't be afraid to go too extreme with some of these. These are just kind of supposed to be blend shapes. So we got display. And let's see, what else do we need? And then I like to do a rig pose flex. So on this one, we don't want to actually rotate these fingers. we want to rotate just these guys. And all I'm doing here is I'm just holding shift and selecting all of these. And I'll go back to the middle. And I'll do something like that. And this is supposed to be like if you're gripping something, like you're flexing your hand, or you're like, imagine you're holding onto a wire or something like that. All right, so and then we got our flex, our curled, and our splay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a splay in also, because that might be nice to be able to reverse this kind of. Again, I'm gonna go too extreme with this, just so we have these values that we can blend between. All right, we have our rig pose splay in, rig pose splay out, our curled fist, and our flex. And we can just plug these in, and you'll see that each of these does what we want it to do. And then what I'm going to do here, because I hate messy networks, so I'm just going to select all these, and I'm going to hold A. And in Houdini, if you hold A with selected nodes, you can either align them like that, or you can align them up and down, which is nice. You can also shift L to organize just those nodes, or L to organize everything in your network. That sometimes really messes things up. So I like to just have control and hold shift A. Okay, so we want to essentially compile this into a way we can control each individual finger. And how we want to do that is we'll take a null, I'll call this input, and then we'll drop a skeleton blend. And best way we can just start this is I like the curl to be my first, honestly, I don't know why. So I'm gonna start with a curled fist. And then one thing, I just do this out of paranoia, but you don't have to. I turn off scale because these joints should not be scaling. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I always do that. You don't really have to. It's not a big deal. And I'm gonna keep it in local space, so I'm not gonna turn on this world space. And you'll see now we can curl the hand in and out, but we want to be able to control each of these fingers individually. So I'm going to go ahead and on the group, I am just going to select the index finger. And then with the index finger selected, you can see that now this only controls the index finger blend. Even though this whole rig pose is the whole fist, this slider just controls that index finger. So I'm going to call this index finger blend. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just hold Alt and drag that skeleton blend out. And then on this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to select all of the middle finger joints. And I'm going to call this middle finger blend. Okay, and now we can control the middle finger, and we can control the index finger. So we're starting to get these kind of set out. And the nice thing about this is since the joints are named the same, we can use these same skeleton blends for all the rest of these. We don't have to remake these and reselect them for each one of these. So we can keep dragging these out, and then I'll go ahead and I'll just do the ring finger, and I'll go ahead and just skip until I've done the whole hand. All right, so now I have the thumb, the pinky, the ring, the middle finger, and the index finger. And one weird thing that I think is really cool about these skeleton blends is that you can actually go past one. You can't go into negatives because there's no difference kind of there. But I can actually go past one, and you'll see it'll keep curling, which I think is very cool and gives you a lot of control. So really, you honestly don't even have to animate this exactly how you want, or set this rig pose up exactly how you want, because you're going to have further controls than just your base skeleton blends. All right, and so we have this all set up now. And I'm going to go ahead and select these inputs, drag them into, hold them and drag them into this null, and put the null into the rig pose. I'm going to call this rig pose out. That way, when we're copy and pasting these, I'm going to go ahead and just select all these, Shift O to make a network. I have mine set to always be black. Yours will probably be like some other color. And I'm going to call this Pearl Blends. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to drag everything. So just select all of it and then Alt drag. And I'm going to plug this guy in here. Last output of our curl blends. And then I'm going to call this Splay Blends. And I'm going to take our, where's our splay? I'll call this Splay Out Blends. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to replace this with this guy. And now we can curl. So if I curl the front finger and then I want to splay it, we already have these controls set up and we didn't have to do an individual one for each finger, which saves a lot of time because there's a lot of fingers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure all these are reset to 0. And then I'll go ahead and just do the rest of the hand and then I'll show you what I like to do next. All right, so I have all of these set up. It's just the same thing copied and pasted with the changes in these rig poses. And each of them connects the input to the last skeleton blend in that setup, and then all of that goes into the third input of the bone deform. And we have full control through each of these, how we want to blend our move our fingers. But going from each of these, like if say animating this way or adjusting poses this way is extremely annoying, and this is not how I would want to work. So we're going to kind of set it up in a nice way inside of a subnet. Okay, so in order to set this up in a nice way, we're going to select everything, and then we're just going to press Shift-C. And that's going to put everything into a subnet. It'll probably take a second. And now we have this subnet, which comes in through this first input and then out through this output. So we have the input and the output. And now we have a much cleaner little setup. So in order to set these controls up, we're going to highlight the subnet, and then in here you'll see these inputs. And we don't want to make this an HDA because there's some stuff I'll get into later about KineFX where you have to have basically default states. And if you try to put a rig pose inside of an not a rig pose, if you try to, it can get weird, it can get funky. So we're just going to ignore HDAs for right now, and we're just going to work with subnets. I'll show you more about HDAs with KineFX later. So to start and to make this nice, we're going to select it, and then select this little gear icon up here. Go to Edit Parameter Interface, and we're going to get a box that looks like this. And then first off, I don't want any of these. I don't care about these labels or any of that stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make them all invisible by just, if you want to see that again, selecting all of these and then hitting this invisible tab. And then they will disappear from here and our interface editor. And we can see them again by checking this on or off. And to apply these changes, all we have to do is hit apply or hit accept. They do the same thing. So to start setting this up, let's drag in a folder, and you don't really have to worry about the folder name up here. We'll call this curl, and then I'll hit apply, and I'll have a curl folder. And now if I dive in here, the fastest way to set this up is to go up to our curl blends, and then all we gotta do is drag each of these, and we do want to name them so we know what we're working with. But let's go ahead, and all you have to do is you have to click on the little bias icon on this parameter, and then you just have to drag it in here, and it will be linked for you. So let's call this index, and then we'll go down, we'll call this middle, we'll call this one ring, pinky, and thumb. We'll hit apply, and let's hop up, we'll hit accept, and then now you'll see we have all of these controls at the top level, which is really nice to just have them on one node so we're not hopping around from node to node and controlling things weird. In the future, I would like to create one that basically is like a full, so it's like whole fist, so you can control all of them with one slider. But at the moment, we're just gonna keep doing this and just show you how to set all this up. So go back up here and go back into the edit parameter interface. I want to create another folder, so I'll call this one display in, actually. Display out. It doesn't matter. You can set these up however you want. And then if I hit apply, you'll see that we have the second tab. We can change if we want them to show up as tabs or little simple boxes, but tabs are nice for fingers just because you're going to have a lot of controls typically because you got a lot of fingers. So on display, we'll just go ahead and we'll do the same thing. So we'll go drag these guys, and I'll probably speed this part up. So I'm just going to stop it. All right, so now we have all of our finger controls set up into a HDI. I can display each of them. Either way, everything works on top of each other, so you can control super easy like this. One quick tip about working with tabs and inside of parameters is just like how if you control middle click on each parameter, you can reset these parameters, or if you alt click, you can set keyframes, or if you control shift click, you can delete all of the channels. So if I animated this flex, for example, and I have it going like that, if I didn't want any more animation, I wanted to delete both these keyframes, I can just control shift click and it'll delete everything and just keep the value that it was at when I did that. One thing though that you can do, if say I have a lot of stuff set up and I don't want to go through and I don't want to control click each of these on every finger and reset everything, a really quick way you can reset or add keyframes or delete all keyframes is actually you can do all of the same controls like in clicks and hotkeys you have on these parameters, and you can actually do them on the shelves. So if I control middle click on the curl, it will reset all of these. Or say if I undo that and then I alt click on the curl, it'll set keyframes for all of these. If I undo that, or if I want to delete all these keyframes I just set, control shift on the tab and I can reset all of these. So a nice way, you can either just work like this and just control middle out all of them. Or another thing I like to do is I'll put all of these inside of one folder, and I'll call this, I think this is the left hand. And so now I can, it will dive down past this and clear everything inside of this folder, even if things are in folders underneath it. And another thing you'll notice also is when everything inside of a folder is set to its default values, you'll see that the text is actually in standard. It's not bolded. You'll see the rest of these are bolded because there's parameters inside of this folder that are not at their default values. So if I control middle click on these, you'll see that they are returning to their default settings, and you'll see that they're no longer bolded. Same goes for values in here. You'll see that as soon as I change this from the 0, it goes from its default value. You'll see that it turns bold, and then if I bring that back down, you'll see it reverts back to normal. Okay, so this is how we'd likely control the hand. Real quick, I might as well just show how I'd go about making these as a whole. So essentially all we do is hop into our subnet, and then we'll do a skeleton blend. And we'll simply just, instead of doing anything on this group value, we will input the first position and the second position directly into the rig pose out. And then we'll go ahead and we'll just do this for the rest of them. Here. And then we want to reset this as the last input. It really doesn't actually matter where you put it, I don't think. You should be good even if you put this in the middle, because all it does is just add on to itself, kind of. So I'll keep doing this. And one thing also you want to note is that by default, this is actually set up to a default value of 1, which is annoying because it's going to bring in whatever the second input is. So I always bring this back down to 0, and then when you drag this, whenever you drag this into your parameters, whatever value it's at when you drag it in, that's going to be the set default. I'll show you real quick how to change that if you don't want them to be like that. So let's dive back into our little controller here, and I'm going to make a folder underneath this left-hand folder. I'm going to make this one a simple folder, so it's not a tabs folder. And I'll go ahead and I'll bring in the curl full hand, and I'll bring in display out full hands, display in full hands, and our flex full hand. All right, and so now you'll see these aren't in a tab-like folder like the rest of them. Oh, I left it as folder name. Change that to full hand controls. And because this is set to a simple folder, it won't be it won't be like a tab. So if I change this to a tab folder, it's going to look like this, and it's just going to add on to the rest of our tabs. I can go collapsible, which will be this kind of open shut like tab. Radio buttons. You got a lot of different options here. Simple is kind of a nice little bounding box for stuff. Then if I wanted to change any of the default values of these, like say the default value of this was like 0.228 or something, and every time I reset it, it would go to 0.228. All you gotta do is on the parameter, hop over to this channels tab, and then this will be your default value. So if I change this to say 0.5, and now I reset this, it's gonna go to 0.5 every time I reset it, which is not what I want, but you might for something. So there's that. And I'll hit accept. And now we have the option to kind of work with the hand individually and full. And we can continue using these as well. Like it doesn't, these full controls don't affect our ability to continue using this individual finger controls. So that's a really nice way I like to control my hands. And then let's go ahead and reset that all. And that, I think, sums up how I like to do hands and fingers and how you can make a bunch of rig poses, combine them together into a subnet, and get some really simple, easy controls. All right, thank you for watching, and I'll keep doing these KineFX tutorials, and we'll keep covering more and more kind of advanced topics on this. Thanks.